Thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thanks, everybody. Well, we thought since we're kind of late in the game here, we try to maybe do something different. Why don't we get everybody to stand up? You don't have to leave. I just said stand up. All right, let's get everybody to stand up. Yeah, stretch a bit. And so, if you do not have an avatar, or if you have an avatar, sit down. If you have an avatar, sit down. Oh, shoot. Okay. It should have been the other way around.
Yeah,
All right, now
that's
stand back up. If you do not have an avatar, sit back down. All right.
That's better.
There we go. There we go. Much better. If you have a digital wallet, sit down. All right. If you have cryptocurrency, sit down. Wow, pretty impressive.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So today we're here to talk to you about interoperability. I don't think you've heard that word come up once today, did you? No? Every time it came up, my team kept turning around and looking at me. I was like I'm going to tell you something different that nobody else is telling. And it was kind of bad because every speaker I heard, I'm like, oh my God, they're saying exactly what I'm going to say about it. So we're going to try to figure out how we can make it different for everybody.
Yeah, and there's not a bigger problem to solve and a bigger topic. This is one of the fundamental and probably most strategic areas that the tech community, that every business that is going to be thinking about their business model, their operating model, how to actually make money in the metaverse, how you're going to get the most value out of the metaverse. Interoperability is it's a huge topic, and it's a very complicated topic. Yeah. So, Steve, how would you frame the issue of interoperability?
Well, for us, I like making things as simple as possible. So if I understand it, other people can understand it. And so part of it is, how can you navigate through virtual worlds seamlessly? And that's kind of what it comes down to. I run innovation at the bank, and so I do a lot of experimentation with people. And what I'd like to do is be able to get into environments like AltSpace or Engage VR or Horizon World and kind of move people through. But as I do that, it's actually, people get cut off. People don't know. You have to log in with different passwords and user. It's actually really clumsy, and it gives a really bad experience. And so the first thing that comes with people that I'm trying to get awareness is, oh, this is terrible. Why would anybody do this? And it is a terrible experience right now. So we got to figure out, how do we make it more convenient for people to kind of go between worlds? But then also, how do you use those assets that you've bought or earned in different organizations and be able to take them around? And so that comes with avatars. I know like Ready Player One is doing some stuff. Unity, actually I was talking to a senior person from Unity today, and they were telling me, oh yeah, Steve, we're doing it as well. So they wanted to make sure I heard it before I was speaking on the stage today. And Metapis is also doing some stuff. So yeah, I think it's interesting, but it's going to be key if we're really going to get into the metaverse and get the benefit of it.
So there's kind of a front end of this and a back end of this. There's something that the users and the consumers of the metaverse will experience, not necessarily the technical folks.
Yeah.
And then there's the work that has to go on in the background. There's fundamental conceptual changes that have to take place for interoperability to work. How do you frame this up so that this is obviously a pretty sophisticated audience that is not new to this topic, but how should we be thinking about this?
Well, you guys kept hearing standards. Everybody's talking about standards. And maybe this is kind of where I'm going to be asking you guys questions. So you guys can kind of just shout out the answer. But everybody's heard of TCP/IP, HTTPS, right? Has everybody heard of HTTPS? Yeah, I'm sure you have. And it's kind of what the websites are all secured on. That was a standard that was developed. Does anybody know, except for the people I've already told the answer to, does anybody know when that standard became mandated? This is the internet, right? So when did that standard think internet early 90s. Just throw out some numbers. Don't be embarrassed. It's 5 years ago. Okay, somebody's been listening to. Yeah. So yeah. So no, it was 2016. So over almost 30 years. And everybody knows this, but it's taken 30 years for the internet to agree on standards and make it mandated. So I think in the metaverse, we're going to have the same thing. So are we going to look at some of the interoperability on like Vox space, or is it going to be photorealistic, or is it going to be a combination of those items? And we have to figure that out. But the thing is, it's being managed by a lot of different companies that have different objectives, different approaches. And to come up with standards and get them all to agree is going to be difficult. And then you got the underlying piece, which is the Web3 piece, which is kind of the how are you going to pay for things, how are you going to transact. And so all of that has to come together if and when you're going to realize a real metaverse.
There's some lessons to be learned from the past, though. I mean, we had these, and Matthew Ball talks about this. We had these protocol wars that took place, throughout the 80s and 90s, and you had different types of protocols for the internet. And finally, we settled on this TCP/IP sort of set of protocols, which really are the foundation of what we have today. And you had HTTP, and then we began writing things in HTML. What are some comparators that you would say are, the kind of some similarities that we were working with?
I mean, JPEG is one of the reason JPEG took off for the internet was it was light and it was an open standard. So they're looking for the same type of things for 3D images and stuff like that. I know there's, and a lot of the people have been mentioning them. There's the USD standard, there's GLP, there's all kinds of standards. Now, everybody's trying to put their standard in, and kind of, if you get that first mover's advantage, it's, it's their standard, and that's what gets deployed out.
And the companies that dominate this today, the big video game companies, big tech firms, you've got the big app stores, and who are the winners and losers?
Well, I mean, I think it's still yet to be written, because I mean, if you think about like the Apple store and Facebook store, they've got their platforms. What they want you to do is get onto their platforms, and actually. Michael Ball's book actually explains this really well. So if you ever want to read a really good book to understand this, I read it while I was on vacation. It's really about, they get a cut of every process, every transaction, and that's how they want to operate it. But I think what we need to do is go to that open metaverse and try to push that open metaverse. And I know there's organizations I'm sure we'll be covering here in a bit on how do you create that openness? Because I agree that it shouldn't be owned by the big companies. For it to really flourish, it's got to be open, and we've got to figure out how we can make those standards so that any of us can build and not have to pay 30-40% on everything we create.
Right. And if you start to look at the landscape, you see obviously there's just a lot of startups that are beginning to shape these metaverse native type business models. How does that impact companies like
financial
ours?
services and stuff like that? Well, I mean, banks are organizations that are trusted organizations, right? You don't put your money into a bank like ours if you don't trust that we're going to keep it safe and keep your data safe. And so I think us banks like myself coming in, looking at how do we make sure that we can make that clumsy experience. I don't know, the ones that have digital wallets, getting crypto in there, moving it to fiat, taking that out. I mean, it's crazy. It's just a crazy experience. I did it myself just to kind of experience it. And so if we can figure a way to make it very seamless, you just want to transact. So how do we make it very seamless for you to get on-chain, off-chain, and be able to transact? And I think that's what we're looking to do. I meet with a lot of organizations in my role in innovation, and some of the stuff is people are afraid to make decisions and platform decisions because I sat with a team in London where I live, and it's a big sports team. I won't say which big sports team. But they said, oh, you know what? We were going to get into this platform, but we just realized last week that this next platform's graphics were much better. And what if we go with them and then somebody else gets better graphics and stuff like so? A lot of people are afraid to make long-term decisions because they feel like once they're in, they're stuck onto a platform. And so I like what Neil Stevenson said, which was the first time I had heard it before I had it on my presentation to talk about, is things like metaverse as a service. So how do you make it easy for organizations and give that responsibility to the organizations to come up with the APIs, come up with that connectivity so that organizations can actually give the metaverse experience to their clients?
So when we talk about like the creator economy, and we talk about assets, digital assets that are being created in the metaverse, if we truly have one metaverse,
Yeah.
which has a number of virtual worlds.
Yeah.
How do you think about control and access from one world to the other when you're creating an asset
Yeah.
in one, and you want that asset to have value
Yeah.
when
Yeah, yeah.
you move other worlds? And the way I look at it, that's what the blockchain
Yeah.
was born for.
Exactly.
And you create this asset, it's yours, it lives, but it's really up to the gatekeepers of these virtual worlds, and they've got to be incentivized to let these digital assets move from world to world. So the economics have to make sense for these companies.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the people that are going to flourish are the people that are going to create that openness so that, if you're saying, look, you can buy this beautiful jacket, but you can't leave with it outside of this room. But it's nice in here. You look great in it. But the minute you
Why would
get
I
out,
buy the jacket?
Exactly.
I wouldn't buy the jacket.
You need to.
Or I would pay just a little bit of money for that jacket.
Exactly.
Right.
A micropayment, but make sure you take it off before
Right.
you leave the room, all right? So, but I think that's kind of the experience. Nobody's going to like doing that. Nobody's going to leave their assets there and say, well, I can only use it if I'm in this one little space.
It's the market
And
forces
guess
that'll
what?
drive
If
it.
nobody's in that space and the community goes away, I got this beautiful jacket, but I'm going to be sitting alone in this room, And so I think it's about how I can use that stuff elsewhere and kind of show it off to all my friends because it is a beautiful jacket.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, how do we start to think about the business models and who are the big players? So, we talk a lot about the video game
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
Who leads the way in this? Is it the tech firms that are here? Is it the video game companies?
Yeah.
Is it the startups, the companies that don't even exist yet?
And I think it's a combination of all of them. We're trying to be hardware, software agnostic. Reality is we don't have a bet on any specific horse. We're going to try them all out. So that's why it's the same mentality when you run innovation. You don't throw all your money behind one person because, maybe VHS will win, maybe Betamax will win. You got to do little experiments and see what platforms make sense to you and how do you give that experience and give it a portfolio. And then the ones that are like, hey, this is working out well, those are the ones you scale and you put more money into. I think some people, when they think about innovation or they think about making these expenditures, they're like, all right, we got to make a big bet. We're throwing all our money in. We're all in. And the reality is this is new. It's new to all of us. We're all learning. There's not a single person in this room that's not learning.
It's new, but we've seen this before. We've
Oh,
seen
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
patterns before,
Yeah.
and we can learn from the internet protocol wars of the past. We can learn from something like Beta and
exactly.
VHS,
Yeah.
and many other examples. And I agree with you. I'm very pragmatic as well. Take a portfolio view because it's going to be really hard to predict.
Yeah.
How this is going to play.
I don't think the word, the metaverse, I don't think we're going to be using that word going forward. I mean, you guys remember when the internet came out, and I mean, who still uses who uses the information superhighway or cyberspace? Okay, somebody there in
My
the back.
aunt. My aunt
Somebody over
still
there,
uses
sorry,
cyberspace.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But your aunt still uses cyberspace? Oh, okay. So, but I mean, the same thing in the metaverse. I mean, and the definition of what is the metaverse, I think, is going to change. So, it's a constant change, and that's what makes I get excited. I get bored easily, so I like to change and see how it operates and how can we create value. At the bottom line is, you got to create value for somebody somehow. If you're not creating value, you're just kind of having fun, but it's not going to be sustainable.
Well, Well, this has been fantastic, Steve. This is great insight. It's very practical, very pragmatic, and we appreciate you guys attending, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.